The silence of the old Hemlock House was not an empty one. It was a thick, velvety quiet, heavy with the weight of forgotten things. For Leo, it was the perfect refuge. A distant, eccentric uncle he'd never met had willed him the crumbling Victorian estate, and for a writer plagued by the city's cacophony, it was a godsend. The first few days were idyllic. Sunlight, dusty and golden, streamed through the leaded glass windows. The only sounds were the groan of ancient floorboards under his feet and the whisper of the wind through the surrounding pines. He set up his typewriter in the library, its shelves bowed under the weight of leather-bound books whose titles had long since faded. It was on the third evening that he noticed the first inconsistency. He was certain, with the absolute clarity one has about mundane things, that he had placed a heavy, crystal ashtray on the right-hand side of the mantelpiece. He found it on the left. He shrugged it off. The house was settling. He was tired. Then the photographs began to change. They were old, sepia-toned portraits of severe-looking men and women with pale, unblinking eyes. One, in particular, held his attention, a young woman in a high-collared black dress, her hair pulled back tightly, her expression one of profound sorrow. Her name, according to the spidery script on the frame, was Eleanor. One morning, he could have sworn Eleanor's eyes, in the photograph, were looking straight ahead. That afternoon, they seemed to be angled slightly toward the library door. A trick of the light, he told himself. An artist's imperfect brushstroke captured an emulsion. The sounds started soon after. Not the groans of the house, but soft, deliberate sounds. The faint, rhythmic click, click, click of a door latch being slowly turned, then released over and over from the floor above. He would climb the grand staircase, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs, only to find every door standing open, every room still and empty. He began sleeping with a fire iron by his bed. The true horror, the one that unstitched his sanity thread by thread, was the phenomenon he came to call the echo. He would be writing, the clack of his typewriter the only defiance against the silence, when he'd hear it, a faint, lagging echo from the hallway. But it was never quite right. If he typed the quick brown fox, the echo would return, the quick fox, omitting a word. If he typed a sentence and paused, the echo would sometimes add a single, soft, final keystroke of its own. A full stop where he intended a comma. A letter he hadn't pressed. It was learning. It was mocking him. One sleepless night, driven by a mixture of terror and furious curiosity, he set up a digital recorder in the library. He spoke clearly into the microphone. "My name is Leo Evans. I am alone in this house." He played it back. His own voice, clear and firm. Then, a pause, followed by a soft, whispering voice that was not his, a voice that sounded like dry leaves skittering across stone. It spoke only 2 words. "We're not." He fled the library, his breath catching in his throat. He spent the rest of the night huddled in his car, the engine running, the heater on full blast, but he could not escape the cold that had taken root in his bones. The next day, a storm rolled in, trapping him. The electricity died, plunging the house into a gloom broken only by the frantic dance of lightning and the weak glow of his oil lamp. The echo grew bolder. Now it didn't just mimic, it spoke. From the top of the stairs, a child's voice would sing a fragmented nursery rhyme. From the dining room, he heard the clink of cutlery and the murmur of polite conversation, falling silent the moment he entered. He saw figures in his peripheral vision, a man in a dark coat standing in a doorway, a woman in a flowing gown gliding across the hall. When he turned, there was only dust. He found himself in the basement, the lamp casting long, leaping shadows. The air was frigid and smelled of damp earth and something else, something metallic and old. In the corner, half hidden behind a rotten timber, was a small, leather-bound journal. The pages were brittle, the ink faded. It was Eleanor's. October 12, 1898, he read. "Father says the house is growing restless. It is no longer content with just our presence. It craves our stories. It learns our habits, our voices, our very thoughts, and then it replays them. But it is a flawed machine. It forgets details. It gets things wrong. And when it gets things wrong, it grows angry. October 30th, 1898. It took little Thomas today. He was always misplacing his toys. This morning, he couldn't find his favorite wooden soldier. He cried and cried. An hour later, we heard his voice from the nursery, cheerful, saying he'd found it. When Mother went to check, the room was empty. But we can still hear him, sometimes laughing. The house has his laugh now. But it never gets the pitch quite right. Leo's blood turned to ice. He understood now. Hemlock House wasn't haunted by ghosts. The house itself was the ghost. A sentient, recording entity, absorbing the lives of its inhabitants, playing them back in a desperate, eternal attempt to feel alive. But it was a broken, insane god, one that corrupted everything it touched, trapping echoes of souls in a nightmare of repetition and error. He had to get out. Now. He scrambled up the stairs, the lamp swinging wildly. As he reached the main hall, the front door, which he had tried to wrench open a dozen times, stood ajar. Beyond it, he saw the storm-ravaged driveway, the promise of freedom. He ran for it. But as he crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut with such force it shook the very foundations of the house. He clawed at the handle, but it was immovable, fused to the plate as if welded. From the darkness of the hall behind him, a voice spoke. It was his own. "Leaving so soon, Leo," it said, but his voice was layered with others: Eleanor's sorrow, Thomas's childish lilt, the dry whisper from the recorder. "But you've only just arrived. Your story is so interesting. All that loneliness. All that fear. We do so enjoy a good tragedy." He turned, pressing his back against the unyielding door. The oil lamp in his hand sputtered, its flame dying. In the final, fleeting moments of light, he saw them. They weren't apparitions, not anymore. They were constructions of the house itself, shapes formed from the peeling wallpaper, the shifting shadows, the very dust in the air. A pale, sorrowful face resolved in the patterns of the wood paneling. A small, malformed hand reached for him from a writhing carpet fringe. The last of the light went out. He felt a cold, dry touch on his cheek. The house, speaking with 100 stolen voices in perfect, horrifying unison, whispered into the absolute blackness, "Let us show you how it ends." The storm broke at dawn. The morning sun shone brightly on Hemlock House. In the library, the typewriter sat silent. On the page, a single sentence was typed, over and over again, each line less coherent than the last, the letters eventually devolving into a single, repeated key pressed into the paper with frantic, mindless force. And from within the deep, listening silence of the house, if one were to press an ear against the front door, one might hear the faint, rhythmic, and eternally imperfect echo of that final, desperate keystroke.